Welcome to Taking Liberties. Debbie Russell and I will talk about panhandlers, their problems in Austin, and some methods that are used on them and for them.
Indeed.
And there is a panhandling ordinance. We've tried to get rid of it, but it's still around, isn't there?
Well, it's actually, we've only been successful in limiting its expansion at this point, but the courts have said locally that two pieces of our panhandling ordinance, our solicitation ordinance actually is what it's called,
yes,
are unconstitutional. And so we would like to see those pieces go away, but that hasn't taken place yet because there's no actual legal trigger from that kind of a ruling to change the policy automatically. Now, the solicitation ordinance covers a lot of people. It covers Girl Scout cookies and firemen with their fire boots.
Yes, yes.
But it all comes down to the way you violate the ordinance is on several levels. One is called aggressive panhandling.
Oh yeah, that's
and that's where you get in people's face and you're aggressive, and you have to file a complaint, and you have to go on records, saying that you can't just I saw somebody over there doing it.
right.
And they have different.
I don't think the ACLU would dispute
No,
that
no.
aggressive
No, but
panhandling
this is where
bad.
it gets a little more
But
milky.
the non-aggressive panhandling.
Well, no, but even the aggressive one, it gets into how close you can be to an ATM machine and things
Okay.
like that.
Okay.
So there is some kind
You
of
call
gray
that
areas.
aggressive?
Well, if you're talking to somebody while they're at the ATM machine,
Oh, okay.
they're saying that you're obviously out to rob them.
Okay.
Which we don't like presumptive laws from the ACLU standpoint, that you're presuming you're a criminal because of you participating in an active dialogue with a fellow citizen.
Okay.
And hence that panhandling has become enculturated, indoctrinated as the mere act of asking for help has now become a crime in and of itself.
Yes.
By the people that stand to profit,
Yeah,
essentially, off of putting that meme forward.
Right, it's against the First Amendment.
Absolutely. Now, the other pieces of it are, well, I should say one other thing about, in practice, this aggressive panhandling piece of our ordinance, it's very troublesome that police are interpreting it as holding a sign saying you need help is aggressive, and it's clearly not. If you read the ordinance, it clearly has nothing to do. It has to be very physical, threatening behavior. Holding a sign is in no way threatening.
How are they proposing to punish that?
They just do. And guess what? You're homeless. Can you hire a lawyer as a homeless person?
Obviously not.
To go take them to court to sue over it? That's what they're banking on. So, we'll see what happens in that realm. But meanwhile, they're cracking down. There's a very specific Operation Clean Sweep to sweep the homeless out of downtown. Now there's a very specific Operation Pied Piper to sweep the homeless youth off the drag. Pied Piper, of course, that insinuates...
Come follow me, yes.
Well, that insinuates that our homeless youth are rats, doesn't it?
Yes.
I think that's terrible. This is
Right.
we're treating these people as subhuman that actually need our services, and we're actually failing them as a community on providing services. And so we spend a lot more money. We spend dollars that could be spent. We could spend pennies on the dollar for human services to a public safety standpoint.
Right.
When you try to hand it over to the police department to take care of it on the back end.
Okay. Now, how does this, recently there's been a change that we are backing. We are hoping that misdemeanors do not cause people to go to jail.
Well, certainly.
Tell us about that and how it applies to the homeless.
State law has always allowed in Texas for officers to have discretion on Class C misdemeanors, whether or not they take you downtown to jail, book you, do the fingerprinting, all that stuff that takes their time and them off the street, and then you spend the night in jail and have all that headache, and then in the morning you get your court date. Well, they have the discretion to just write the ticket with the court date on it, and you go about your merry way.
Without going to jail.
Without having to spend the night in jail. You're still subject to the same charge, to the same consequences. You still go to court for it, but you don't have to spend the night in jail. That's it. You
just
go home instead.
You just receive what?
A ticket, like you would as a speeding ticket on the. And so they have had that, and now unfortunately ACLU Texas a couple of sessions ago passed the law that said that they don't just have discretion, but they cannot take you to jail on Class C misdemeanors. But that got vetoed by our governor. So it's still that discretion continues. But law enforcement actually led the effort this last session to expand that discretion into certain classes of A's and B's. Law enforcement generally by the county officials, because it was the sheriffs who administer our county jails who are having overpopulation problems
Yes.
and are teetering on noncompliance. So they have a very direct need to depopulate their jails to be in compliance. This is one way. Don't take somebody downtown, spend the night in jail for having a joint in their hand.
Right.
And generally, there's a lot of charges under this, but the new A's and B's include up to 2 ounces to 4 ounces of pot possession. You're not selling anything. This is not about decriminalization. This means you just, for having the pot, you get a ticket instead of spending the night in jail. You still have to go to court, all of that stuff. So it's allowed, in Austin, in terms of numbers, that affects 5,000 to 6,000 people a year. And of course, the people that they've been taken to jail for pot possession is black people 3.5 times more than white people in this town, in Austin, Texas. Just savoring the irony there. I'm sorry.
We're not post-racial yet,
Yeah.
are we?
Well, the point is black and whites actually use drugs at the same rate, according to nationwide studies. There's no justification for putting blacks in jail 3.5 times as many times for that particular charge than you do whites.
Well, I'm very glad, and ACLU is very glad that we don't have to send people to jail for a small amount of marijuana.
Now, you do have to qualify. You have to be a resident of the county you're being arrested in or charged in. You have to be not have any other outstanding warrants and not have any other charges against you. You can't have committed another crime too, and this be a secondary crime. So it's still the discretion of the officer that he chooses to send you down. But what this does is now, because they're going to be documenting it and writing down why they chose to take him to jail, because we managed to get this in policy, they have to put on their police report, and they have to call for their supervisor and get permission. I'm going to go ahead and arrest him, blah, blah, blah. And he says yes, and then it's written down. We can then track that, and we can see, are they doing this discriminately or are they doing it equitably?
So it's easier for the police officer to just write a ticket and not have to go through calling his supervisor and so forth.
Well, no, he calls us, yeah, right, it's easier for the police officer, so he has to justify it to his supervisor and to the community eventually when we start tracking these efforts.
Sounds very good to me.
Indeed.
Well, thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Ruth.